Yes, family, isn't it good to talk after a couple of wins? A couple of the more memorable wins that the Eagles have had in recent times. Spirited wins, come from behind wins. A bit of fight restored to the football club in the last couple of weeks. That's been sorely lacking for so long, Drew Jones. It's a good time to be an Eagles fan.
I'm on board. I'm on the Jared Schofield interim coach train. Absolutely. Right now, we've been a different team the last couple of weeks. Lots of fight in the derby. And I just couldn't remember the last time we'd fought back from that far down. Like it's always you accept the game's over if we're down by that much. I mean, by any measure, any team, wherever they are in rebuild or flag contention, that's still a great win, and it's a character building win. And you know that's a hard game to pull out of the fire, even if it is against North Melbourne. But for a team that has shown such a lack of, resilience, character, fight, whatever you want to call it, to fight back from that far down. Yeah, it feels like it's been a long time since we've produced anything like that. I reckon maybe that win against GWS where Nick Nat kicked a goal at the very end, I reckon we had to show a fair bit of fortitude on that day. But then apart from that, you're thinking back to 2005, 2006 at Kardinia Park.
It's been a really enjoyable couple of weeks, and we're building into the Carlton game with a lot of momentum. What a story it would be if we can knock off the Blues. So we'll look at that. We'll look at the coaching situation, of course, which has also moved in the last 24 hours. There's a lot to take stock of in that sense and in the trade department as well. But I think we've got to focus on the last 2 weeks just to start the show, and the players and some of the performances and some of the individuals that I think fans want to talk about so much. I'm going to go back to the Gold Coast game, Drewy. So 2 weeks ago, the 10-point win. I really want to talk about Jack Darling. And I know that it's sexy to talk about the young players at the moment and the ones coming through, and we will. But, if you just take the whole Jack Darling situation into context. So, one of our highest games played. Is his second highest games played? I know his second most goals kicked. Second or third most games played, right up there. Legend of the football club, gets dropped. Now, a lot of players in Jack Darling's situation who get dropped just say, that's it, drop the bundle, speak to the agent, try get me a trade for next year. I'm clearly not in the plans. Find me a situation out of here because they're going in a different direction. That's fine. And I'd like to play for another year or so. Is there another club that can find me? Goes back to the Waffle, wins them the game in the Waffle, works his ass off, gets back into the AFL, leads the pressure momentum barometer, whatever you want to call it, for the Eagles against Gold Coast. That interception for the Jake Waterman goal on 3/4 time.
Huge.
We don't win the game without that.
Yep.
We do not beat Gold Coast without that Jake Waterman goal on 3/4 time. And it doesn't happen without Jack Darling intervening. So I just think he deserves so much credit considering some of the crap he's copped in recent times for his professionalism and his attitude. And if you're a young player, a Harley Reid or a Campbell Chester or a Harvey Johnson, whatever, if I'm Jared Schofield, I'm saying that is how you build an AFL career, with an attitude like that and professionalism and a mentality like that. He should be the shining example for our youngsters at the moment, the way he's gone about it, considering he was axed, at a time when he's generated so many milestones in his Eagles career.
Didn't know that he had that left in him, that performance, because it wasn't about necessarily clunky big marks or kicking goals. It was, you talked about the pressure. That was the old school Jack Darling that we had running around the front half, chasing people down, laying big tackles, doing his karate flips, looking like, an explosive athlete. So Taylor Walker has had a renaissance, which he's now coming to the end of, but Tex 3 or 4 years ago looked done. And then he all of a sudden had an All-Australian year, kick goals, was influential at Adelaide. Maybe Jack could do that for us. Maybe he can find another gear. He's got really fit. He's got new motivation, new coach. That could be sort of his ticket to another little bump in his career, because from what we've seen the last couple of weeks, he absolutely has shots left to fire, whereas I probably didn't feel that way 2 months ago. He hasn't been terrible this year. He's probably been sort of better than last year, but him going out of the side, he was certainly struggling in Simo's last couple of weeks, and then it feels like he's got a bit of a new lease on life, and good on him for for showing the fortitude to bounce back. And then, as you say, set that example. So I feel really good about Jack Darling now going into next year, where maybe he's not necessarily a walk-up start every week, but he's going to get to his 300 games. And if he's playing like that, then he's absolutely in the team. And it's a good thing that our young players have to fight for a spot to get into the team, to be good enough to improve at the level below. So, yeah, I really loved his game against Gold Coast, and I thought he was good last week. I've been racking my brain trying to work out if it was late in the North Melbourne game. Did he dive across and spoil a ball in the fourth quarter? And he kept
goal.
Yes, so he kept the ball alive. Otherwise, it would have been, I think, an intercept mark, maybe for Comben. Even just moments like that, I remember seeing that and being like, geez, I don't think we win without that little act. And there's no stat for it. Like, it's a spoil or a 1%er, but there's no significant stat on it. I'm sure it gets shown in the review after the game. So that's the Jack Darling that we know and love. And it's been so good to have him back the last couple of weeks. The senior players have stepped up for us. Like Jeremy McGovern, he might have booked himself an All-Australian spot the last couple of weeks. So he's been absolutely immense.
Fifth blazer.
Yeah. And probably it's going to be hard to argue against it. Although a lot of key defenders have had great years, he's been absolutely superb. He's been doing everything. I think the move for him to give him the keys as the key defender, and then using Ruben Jimby as sort of that hybrid tall back rebounder has been really clever. They took a calculated risk against North. It's like McGovern, you shut down Larkey, and then we'll back Ruben to play on Teakle, or Witherden to play on Teakle. It ended up really working for us.
Yeah, it's been really good in that sense. And then you talk about moments from veterans. I mean, Andrew Gaff last week, again, his professionalism through this has been superb. Look, he's being paid a lot of money, so let's not hail him as some sort of self-sacrificial hero of the club. He's on a lot of money, so he's there to be professional and do his job as he should when he's being paid that much. So that's great. But still, his attitude has been fantastic. You know, the way the club's managed it is great. So we want to get him to AFL Life membership and have the farewell against the Blues. But they didn't play him against the Kangaroos. When I saw he was sub, I went, great move, right? Yep. That is exactly what he should be for this game. And then he plays against Carlton. And then for him to come on in those circumstances and take that big mark late, I knew he wasn't going to kick it. We all knew. Any Eagles fan who's watched Gaffy in the last few years knew there was no chance he was making the distance. But he still had a huge moment in the match-winning goal, and now we get to celebrate him this week. And before we talk about some of the other big contributors over the last fortnight and the youngsters, you know, we should touch on Gaffy's career because, yes, it's faded enormously in the last 2-3 years, but you know, we can't let recency bias impact the way we look at him. He's just been one of the greats of the last decade for the club, and the way that I sum up, I guess, in my mind, how great Andrew Gaffy is I think he's become the closest player to penetrating those wing positions in the all-time Eagles side. Obviously, Matera's unmoved on one wing, but, you know, I think I've wrestled with it. Does he get past Main Waring on the other? You know, they're both two-time All-Australians. Gaffy was a club champion. We were winning premierships. Like, Main Waring probably just edges him, but it's a close call for mine. I think if you're asking for them to play at their absolute peak on any given day, you go Maney, but if you're looking for them at their best over the course of a season, it's probably Gaff for consistency. That's the way I would look at it. So that for me is the ultimate compliment that you can give Andrew Gaff.
Yeah, so I sit in a very similar boat, albeit because I'm a little bit younger, I didn't see the best of Chris Mainwaring, but understand, you know, from watching the old games and from the way that people talk about him, that he was a highly influential player like Dermot Brereton, you know, raves about Mainwaring at his absolute best, having to play against him and owning that wing at Subiaco or at the MCG. So, yeah, I think it is a huge compliment to say that he is at least in the conversation to being a part of that 1-2 punch that we've got, because they're almost impossible to move out of that best ever team. So I think he's had more possessions than any other Eagles player in history. Like he certainly holds a place amongst the best and most consistent players in West Coast history. He's probably not among the most influential in terms of the way that and his ceiling on games, but just the fact that you can just pop his magnet on the board, you're going to get an 8 out of 10 game for pretty much 230 of his 280 games for the Eagles. You take that. There's not many players who you can rely on to have that sort of consistency over and over again. I just look back on his early years as well with so much fondness. Like, he had the skinniest arms. He was the smallest AFL player I feel like I'd ever seen in the green vest earlier. I remember he came on, I think it was a game at Marvel Stadium, came on and kicked a couple of really nice running goals on that, smooth left foot to announce himself after being in the sub so much in that first year. And he was huge for us during 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, that 5-year period. He wouldn't have played a bad game. And it's unfortunate, obviously, how it panned out. He doesn't get his premiership. He certainly deserves to have one around his neck. But unfortunately, the one bad moment he had probably for his entire life happened to cost him that. And it's obviously such a shame. But I spoke to Will Schofield about Gaffy a few weeks ago when the announcement was made. And I said, do you feel like the Brayshaw incident, like he feels like he hasn't been the same since? He had a career high average for disposals in 2019. So he came back desperate to do whatever he could for the football club to help them get back and compete for another flag. He might have been maybe our best player that year. Obviously, I've blocked it out because I didn't remember that, but that shows the character of Gaff. It's probably easy to forget, but he had a career best year for disposals the year after all that happened.
Yeah, he kicked 2 goals and had 30 in that semi-final loss to Geelong, got us back into the game, narrowly ahead through the mid part of the game. Yeah, we just couldn't go on with it. So, yeah, and he's another Vic Metro boy who stayed the journey. Everyone goes on about the go-home factor and don't draft Vic Metro boys. Luke Shuey, Andrew Gaff, they've all hung around. Juddy stayed for longer than we thought, so he's one that's committed to West Coast long-term, and, he's an Eagles great. There's just no disputing that, and people will cast their mind back to his peak rather than the last couple of years when assessing Andrew Gaff over the journey, and can't wait to celebrate him on Sunday against Carlton, which will be obviously a mammoth affair, not just for the Eagles and Gaff, but for the AFL on the whole, to watch how Carlton deals with their injury crisis against an up-and-about Eagles team. It feels like a blockbuster for us, Drewy. We're going to get onto that at the end, but it feels like sort of a Friday night type game where the nation's going to be watching us. I'm excited for it in that sense, and for them to see our youngsters, because there's still some crap that gets bandied about that the West Coast. I've heard it on a couple of shows in the last 24 hours. And I don't want to target the show specifically, but the West Coast dip is the worst of it's yet to come, and they haven't bottomed out yet. And after Harley Reid and Oscar Allen, where's the young talent? Like, have you not watched Brady Hoff? Have you not watched Ruben Ginbey? Like, are you serious? How are they not in your mind? Have you not seen what Harvey Johnston and Jack Williams and other guys have done? Have you not seen what Elijah Hewitt did last season? Have you not seen what Noah Long's done before he got his injury? Like, come on. There is talent there, and we've certainly started the rebuild. Like, yes, there's going to be a dip when Yowie and McGovern retire, but then the younger players will be more experienced. We'll have a couple of free agents that would have come in. We would have gone into the draft a bit more. Like, we've started the rebuild. It might have a couple of little dips and peaks and troughs to go through. But anyway, some of the mind-numbing commentary that comes through at times is hard to fathom, considering how well, Drew, and you can segue into that with your thoughts on this, our youngsters have played in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, embarrassing, maybe that's too strong a word, and it's sort of almost funny for us. But, obviously people aren't watching close enough if they're not talking about Brady Hoff as being one of the best shutdown defenders in the league for the season. Not many, I guess, fans outside, unless you're a diehard AFL fan or you're a West Coast fan, maybe you don't know too much about Brady Hoff, but he's had a superb year, as we know. Yep. And then if you're paying any attention to West Coast at the moment, which everyone in a way should be, because they're winning games and they're looking for a new coach, and is Jared Schofield, putting his hand up for the role, like, then West Coast are newsworthy right now. And Ruben Ginbey has been one of the most talked about moves that has been made by Schofield, moving him into the backline, and he's been awesome the last few weeks. So I think the evidence is pretty clear. And as you mentioned, we've seen, great sparks from Hewitt and Long. But Yeah, there's probably a lack of understanding of where the Eagles list is at, because it's just so easy to say, oh, it's going to be a 5-year rebuild, and that's why, XYZ coach doesn't want to commit to going through the process because it's too hard and the darkest days are to come and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we know that we understand where the list is at, and yeah, there's a few holes in it, but I think it can be fixed fairly quickly. Obviously, there's a first round pick coming in this year, and then whatever else happens with trade and free agency, which who knows. But we've seen so many good signs from the young players. I got to hold my hands up about Zane True. I didn't think this was possible. I thought he was going to be a good waffle player, and it would be perhaps a Greg Clark situation. But given the opportunity, he has played a role superbly, and he looks like an AFL player. Like, I don't know how you feel watching him, but he looks at the level when he's been given the chance.
Yeah. So he's the one, I reckon, that you look at and go, maybe his papers were stamped under Simo, and now that's changed under a change. Jared Schofield aside, under a coaching change. So that's one that stood out. He's looked really good. I mean, he's got pace. His disposal seems clean. You can set him a task.
Looks like he's not going to be something.
He's not going to be a Rolls-Royce midfielder, but geez, he can do a job in there, and he's got some ticker about him. He just seems to be, as a youngster, part of our midfield at the moment, doing a job. And pressure will come from new draftees, and if a Jack Graham comes in, for sure. But my goodness, he's in the team at the moment, and he's giving us an option. He deserves to stay on the list. Harvey Johnston's the one that I've liked, Drewy, and we knew that the raps on him were pretty big around the draft. The Eagles thought they'd stolen one. What I like about him is that when you're a young player coming in, the biggest thing you have to adjust to is the pace. And how often do we see young players get run down early on in their career because they just don't adjust to the pace? He's made a couple of mistakes here and there, but he looks really clean, and he just seems like he's got time. That's the thing I like so much about Harvey Johnston. He never seems rushed when he's got the football. Put another couple of seasons into him, that's going to be a real asset.
Yeah, I like him in the team. Like, I think at the moment, if I'm choosing between, say, a Petruccelli or a Harvey Johnston, like, I'm leaning towards Harvey to be in the team and play that role. Everything he's done so far, it's similar to what I saw from Long early, where you just see those little signs that, like, he's a clever player, knows how to manipulate space, can use the ball well, he's not going to need to have 30 touches to have an impact on a game. So loved what I've seen from him. Do you think Dua Lipa has shown some signs in the last couple of weeks? It seems to me like he might have something. Like, he's obviously not a high possession player, but he's having some moments, and he's got the most ball in the name at the club probably. So, like, that's fun. And then Jack Williams, I guess, was the other name we haven't thrown in there necessarily, but he continues to show signs that he's going to be a player. So I think there's lots to be optimistic about. And everyone, it feels like over the last 2 weeks, everyone's had a moment somewhere. Everyone's done something and contributed. There's no passengers. And then, like, how good to see Oscar Allen back, like, clunking marks, kicking goals, having significant moments, because he's had to battle back from this horrible injury after having such a great year last year. First year as captain obviously has been challenging. Like, it's just been so good the last couple of weeks, and particularly for him to have that moment. He's just got engaged. He had that Instagram post where he's like, geez, what a 2 weeks it's been. So it's been awesome to see Oscar go so well.
Yeah. We've had concerns over his knee, and you watched him a few weeks ago, I think in the Derby, and you went, oh God, is that knee really bad that he just can't impact the game? But then he kicks 5 against North, and no, okay. The Oscar Allen that can win a Coleman medal is still there. So really encouraging. Jack Williams is just a fantastic prospect. We've done well with such a late pick in the draft with him. He's so exciting. Hey, I want to mention Bailey Williams, Drewy. I reckon the last 2 weeks, and maybe he's another one since Simo's gone who's just found a lease of life. I think he's been really good, and he's copped a fair bit, and we know that his ruck work is not the full bottle, and that's not necessarily his number one strength. He's not an artist in the centre square, and he can get beaten out when it comes to taps. But I reckon the last 2 weeks against good ruckman in Witts and Tristan Sherry, well, I'm not saying he's beaten them. His contest work has been so good, and he's jumping and he's running, and some of his ruck work, that I reckon he's diluted a lot of their influence in those games in the middle and allowed us to win some clearances. I think he's competed really well. He's keeping Matt Flynn out the team. I don't know what the situation is with Flynn. Maybe that's another one where Simo's gone and they don't rate the move. I'm not sure. It's going to be an interesting development in that space. This is a guy who is still very much in the infancy of his career. He's played 60-odd games, Bailey Williams, but he's led the ruck for us for 2 years. And I reckon the last 2 weeks he's competed superbly. And I think some of the critics of him just need to lay off a little bit because he's just working ever so hard. And he's another one that I thought has made an impact over the past fortnight.
Yeah, and he's been much better. It's been noticeable the last few weeks, and perhaps whether the coaching change has anything to do with that. But he definitely had a down period during the middle of the season. And so he's been one of a number of players who have bounced back. And obviously, we talk about that sort of new coach bump that teams seem to get, and he's obviously benefiting a bit from that. But yeah, I don't think over the last 2 weeks against Wits and Sherry, you could have asked for much more. I mean, Sherry's numbers on the weekend were obviously massive, but they are against every ruckman. And I didn't feel like Sherry tore us apart. I felt like Williams was able to hold his own. And it was just, I think he's been fine. And as you said, he's always going to have a ceiling on what he can produce as a number one ruck. But he's a work in progress. Like every ruckman takes forever to become what they're going to become unless they're a generational player. So, yeah, whatever happens with our ruck department, that's very much up in the air at the moment. He's going to be an asset for us going forward.
Okay, so let's move on to the coaching situation and the news of the last 24 hours that Ash Hansen is out of the race. So he joins Jamie Graham and Dean Cox and Josh Carr as probably the four biggest candidates, really, when we started this process in all opting out. Cox and Carr more for family/future prospect reasons. Graham and Hansen, I'm not overly alarmed by it. And there's some who might say, what's going on here? Why are they opting out? Do they think the Eagles rebuild is going to be that painful? I think with those two, you've got to look at their age. They're both in their early 40s. They're also senior assistants at their clubs, which are likely to challenge, even though Carlton and Freo have both had dips in recent weeks, likely to challenge for flags in the next couple of years. I'd say they're on pretty good money, both of them as well, for assistant coaches. So if you're in their shoes, you're going, hang on, I'm early 40s. I'm on really good money as it is. I'm at a club that's going to challenge for a flag. Do I want to step away from that and maybe put myself under serious stress and potentially risk my future prospects with a rebuild, regardless of where you think it's at, with a rebuild, like Adam Uze is going through right now. And the likelihood is by the time Richmond are ready to go again, Adam Uze is gone. I can understand in their positions, them thinking, I don't necessarily think that's the best move for my life and my career right now. For someone like a Brett Montgomery and Jared Schofield different because he's in the club already, but a Brett Montgomery who's almost 10 years older, it's a bit different and they feel more experienced and ready to weather some of that storm. That's the way I read it. What do you think?
No, I think you've summed it up really well. Do you get the sense that Hansen was a genuine chance to get the job?
He would have been in the mix. My concern, and I've got insight on this, that the knock on him is that, I don't want to use the S word, soft, but that is just, does he have that real aura and fire? Like in Adam Kingsley, for example, you look at him and you go, wow, like if you're a player, you're just desperate for his approval. Very smart, excellent communicator, but can he really put it up the players? That's been the concern on him. That's always been my read from the outside. So I'm not overly disappointed by that decision.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that he was going to get the job. I don't think he was necessarily threatening for the role. So the fact that he has opted out, I don't think in the grand scheme of things for us it's only a big deal right now because we've had already others pull out. Jamie Graham, I feel like would have been in the pecking order if we're ranking it. He would have been ahead of Hansen to potentially get the job. Obviously Cox and Carr would they would have been your 1 and 2 power rankings. But Graham, I feel like would have absolutely been a chance to get the job. He's done the apprenticeship. He's been at both clubs. Whether he's got the hard edge, again, that's something that we can't comment on. We haven't been coached by Graham, but obviously Montgomery has that. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been influenced by you. So right now, I feel like Montgomery is a really strong chance to get the job. Obviously, he's still left to be a part of the process, whereas the other coaches aren't. But the wins from Jared Schofield, they obviously changed the conversation. I guess this is the same conversation that we're always having: is how do we know if it's real or not? And that's the big decisions that Don Pike and the coaching panel need to make. Is this real, or is this a bump that he's getting because he's come in, he's changed a few roles, he's spun the magnets a little bit, senior players have lifted? Is this sustainable for the next 4 years?
I don't think we'll get sucked into it. I think we will assess it cleanly and objectively as part of the process. Now, his stocks are obviously rising. You can't deny that. And the performances and the victories are only part of it. I've been surprised that the Eagles have published this on social media. It's not usually the way of it, but they've given us an insight into Scoey's team talks on social media the last few weeks. I don't think Adam Simpson would have allowed that. Nothing against him. He just comes from a different time. But Jared Schofield has, and I've been really impressed. I must say, the way he talks, I've warmed to it.
Yeah, me too.
He's still not my first choice, and I'm very wary of the interim coach sugar hit, and I don't think it's the way we should go. But as the others have dropped off, he now all of a sudden is a legitimate top 3 contender. I think with Brett Montgomery, who we've spoken about a lot, and I think when it gets to the interview process, Brett Montgomery will shine. Brett Montgomery wants it badly. I'm certain of that. And I think he'll be a serious contender, and someone else will emerge, Drewy. They always do. When the interview process starts and we don't know who the Eagles have spoken to all in all, we don't know who has applied, someone will jump up and shine through the process. That happens every single time. So I can see it being Montgomery, Schofield, and then 1 to 2 others who jump through. And of course, Scoey's chances are improving, but I don't think I'd be shocked if Don Pike and the board are fully swayed by what's happening now and aren't wary of the interim coach sugar hit. I think they will be.
I really love the way he talks about footy. The way that he communicates about what he's trying to do and what the players are doing, and I've really been impressed by that. And that's definitely helped me warm to Jared Schofield. And I was just watching, we get the vision into our system here at Fox Footy, where we get a lot of stuff that you never see go to air. And I was just watching the different shots on the ground post game on Saturday, and just watching him go around and hug all the players. And there's hugs and there's hugs. There's like hugs where you like really like wrap someone up and you like rub their back and you like press like your face like close to theirs. And there was like I know this is like, maybe this is a bit touchy feely. Maybe I'm softening now. I'm in love. It really made me almost emotional just watching this connection that he had with some of the players, particularly the young ones. But even then, like, he went up behind Liam Duggan and like grabbed him like from behind, and then he like turned around and sort of gave him a big cuddle. And I just think like that means something, that he's got these connections with the players and that they're achieving something together in this little 7-week block that they've got. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right about getting sucked in, and I'm certainly wary because we've seen it recently and it doesn't work usually. I mean, ever, except for Paul Roos. So yeah, I mean, Brett Ratton, you could argue maybe at Carlton, he took him to a semi-final and whatever, but it is fascinating. It is so interesting what we're going to do. And I guess, look, at least we've got another candidate. Like, Jared's come in and done a great job, and it gives us a choice. It means that if Brett Montgomery doesn't impress us, or if the other people don't impress us as much as we would have liked, then we've got another good candidate to choose from. So let's talk Carlton, because we're on the clock here.
We'll do trades first.
Okay, go.
The moving situation. I mean, Tommy Barrass, it looks nailed on that he's going to Hawthorn.
Gone.
Harry Edwards is signing a new deal. Barrass gone. So what do you think we get?
So it's a first rounder plus plus more, right? So is it future first plus the future second? Does that satisfy you?
Yeah, I think we'd love Hawthorn's first round pick this year. For me, that is the priority.
Oh, yes.
Or just any first round pick this year. Like, we've got to get a couple of picks, maybe 3 in the top 25. That's the view on this year's draft. That is really strong. And while there's no clear number 1 pick outside of Levi Ashcroft, who's going to Brisbane anyway, you can throw a blanket over the top 5, and then it's very even to the top 25, and then it fades. We can get 2-3 picks in that top 25. We're doing really well. So we've got to try find one in the first round, I think, for Barras, and I think we will. Hawthorn fans are turning their nose up on anything more than that, and I can understand it, considering his age. They're like, first round pick, all right, well, that's the maximum. We're thinking, well, we should get a little bit more. I don't think we get 2 first rounders for him, but I can see us getting first round pick and a sweetener somewhere. Might be a future second, might be an early third this year, something like that.
Yeah, I could see future second and we give them a future third back, or if that's how it ends up working out. But it's more than a first round pick for sure.
There's a sweetener there.
So, and yeah, you're right. That's the good thing about this year's draft for us, from our perspective. The difference between Hawthorn giving us, they're going to play finals now. The difference between Hawthorn giving us pick 6 and pick 11 or 12, whatever it ends up being, it's not the end of the world that it's a slightly later first round pick, because it is so even. But we're throwing a blanket over. We're going to draft the player that suits us and our needs, and because everyone's so even. So, I think first round this year is non-negotiable, because we need multiple prospects in the door now.
What do you make of the Jack Graham talk? That's a really interesting one that's come through. I don't think we've discussed it in much depth on the pod.
I think I turned my nose up at it a little bit, just use that phrase again, probably 6 weeks ago when we talked about it, maybe even 2 months ago. I had someone contact me to discuss it privately. And after I said that, and they sort of tried to point out to me that if Yo got injured, then we're really lacking the tough inside midfielder to do some of the grunt work. And, we don't want Elijah Hewitt doing the grunt work. We want him to be able to play the role that suits a 19, 20-year-old lighter body. So,
especially if Jinby stays at halfback, which it looks like he will. He's playing so nicely down there.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Schofield gets the job, then Jinby's a halfback flanker. So it would appear who can switch through the midfield, not dissimilar to what how Elliot Yeo became a genuine superstar. So, I've warmed to it once it was put to me in that way. The only issue with Graham is he always seems to be injured.
That's the
he's done his hammy like 3 times or 4 times in the last year. That would be the concern for me. Is like, geez, it'd be annoying if we brought him in on a 3-year, 4-year deal, and he ends up being injured for half of every season, and we don't really get the benefits. So that's probably the concern. I'm still not really sure about Baker, how that's going to fall.
Well, see, it seems like Freo were favourites, and they should be. I don't want us giving up a first round pick for Leon Baker.
Yeah. I really would like to have him.
I know, but
you can't have him.
First round pick for Leon Baker. I don't know how we get it done then. Like, I do not want to give up, along with if we get pick 11 for Tommy Barras, I do not want to give up one of our 2 picks inside the top 11, 12, whatever it'll be, for Baker.
Doesn't feel quite right, does it?
No. The draft's too strong this year. We've got to get those couple of young gun kids in around Harley and build up. We cannot do that. So
I wonder.
I think that's part of the reason why we're looking at Graham. And remember, our list manager, Matt Clark, is the former Richmond list manager, and he knows Graham well. And maybe he thinks that he can get through his injuries. He's actually played quite well the last 2 weeks, so I don't mind it, considering it seems like Baker's tough for us to organise.
I wonder. All the talk 2 to 3 months ago was that we were favourites for Baker, and now it's switched to sort of Freo are the front runners. And I wonder if it's because of the fact that as the year has gone on, the discussions happen, and it's like eventually the conversations come to what does the deal look like? And West Coast must be saying behind closed doors, we don't see a first round pick going the other way. And so then that gets sort of mentioned to Baker, and then Baker's conversations start to probably lean towards Fremantle because they know that Freo can actually get it done, whereas West Coast sort of don't have the draft capital to make it work. And I mean, obviously it makes sense for Baker to play for Freo if they're competing for flags, trying to improve their team, as it does for Shea Bolton. The idea of us chasing Shea Bolton is fanciful. Like, forget about it. It's not happening.
We don't need that right now.
Well, I mean, every team needs a Shea Bolton, but we're not giving up 2 first-rounders to get him.
No chance.
So, yeah, forget about it.
James Peatling's been linked, and
love
that
James
would be great.
Love James Peatling.
Yeah, contested body. But I think that's a bit of manoeuvring. I think you'll get a new deal at GWS. I can't see the Giants allowing him to go because they just need insurance for Canelio on that. He's
so close to breaking into that midfield full time. Like he's got it right there in front of him. He looks like a really good young player. But yeah, I don't see that.
So let's look at the Blues game. So, geez, I mean, with all their outs, Kerno, Mackay, Sard, so many others, it's looking so promising for us. But the forecast of rain, Drewy, may impact things because that takes away Carlton's key position issues a bit.
Annoying. Very annoying.
Yeah.
We'll still have a stronger team, probably. Well, at least we're absolutely on par, if not a stronger team on paper, probably, given their outs. But yeah, you're right. It sort of nullifies a little bit the key position hole that they've got up forward. Like, they might not even pick a key forward. Like, they may just play smalls and then maybe a Lewis Young just as the one tall guy up there, just to have a key pillar to kick it to. But, they've got like Harry Lemmy and they've got some sort of other untried talls, but they may not even have to go down that road. It would have been great to be able to exploit them in that way. We've sort of lost a bit of a weapon there, haven't we?
Yeah. Look, we just got to try and match Cripps with Yo in the midfield. Does Zane True, who was going to tag Sarong before being knocked out in the first 30 seconds against Freo, does he go to Sam Walsh?
Yes, he will be.
And then if you keep those two semi-quiet, their midfield doesn't run that deep with Chera out still. I think we can still beat them if it becomes a midfield grind, considering the weather forecast. And then, Allen and Waterman can still have an impact in the wet. They're that good, as can McGovern. So, mate, it'd be great to win. It'd be great to knock off Carlton in these circumstances with the whole nation watching us on a very big stage. It's a great opportunity for us. And to win 3 in a row after our first away win of the season, how bloody good would that be?
Yeah, it'll be first time since, I reckon, about around 8 to 2021. So it's been a fair while since we've won 3 in a row. So that would be nice. But ultimately, I just think it's great that we've had this opportunity put on a platter for us to actually beat a contender, to beat a good team, like to go into a game with genuine hope off the back of 2 really great wins. So, yeah, I'll sit down for the game and have genuine hope and excitement about watching the young players and to see how we go about it against Carlton. And that's all we're asking for, right? Like, that is literally all that we want.
This will be payback for that bullshit home final in 1999 taken to the MCG. This will finally be our retribution against the Blues. Thanks, Drewy. It's been great. So much to talk about. Thanks, Nest family. Go on, Eagles.